Welcome back, everybody. I am here with Alejandro Monteverde, the director of the hit movie Sound of Freedom, and it's very good to speak to you today, Alejandro.
Well, thank you for having me here, and I'm excited to talk to you.
So, this movie, if you had told me about it before it was made, I would have said, it sounds like a fantastic idea, sounds like a great subject matter to cover, but it's probably not going to do too well at the box office because it's such a dark subject matter. It's not the kind of thing that I would imagine would get a huge upsurge of people flocking to the cinemas to see it. And clearly, I'm wrong because the reaction to this film has been overwhelmingly positive from audiences all over the world. It's been a smash success. Was that something you were expecting? And what do you take away from the level of reaction you've gotten for this film?
Yeah, no, I mean, from the beginning of this project, when I was started writing the screenplay, I was writing a fiction on human trafficking and child trafficking and the sexual exploitation of children. And in the beginning, it was just a pure fiction, but that's what everybody that on my team was telling me that. They're like, "Hey, man, are you sure you want to write about this? Nobody's going to want to distribute this film. It's going to be very hard to market. It's going to be very hard to get it funded. Why are you want to jump into this?" And my answer was because it's a calling. It was not the movie I wanted to make. It was, I felt it in my soul that I had to shine a light into this darkness and through cinema, the power of cinema, and that's how the journey began. And eventually, we started building the team. The producer came on board. He started raising the funds, and as I was writing the screenplay, the producer called me one day and he says, "I want you to meet Tim Ballard," who, for me was important because he was an expert. I am not. I'm just a storyteller. So when I met Tim Ballard, I realized he was a former federal agent that was working on crimes against children. And when I met him, I realized that his life story surpassed my fiction that I was writing. So one thing that led to the next. Next thing you knew, I was started to write a biopic based on a true story. And then here we are. And like you said, when the movie was finished, it found all of those challenges. We couldn't find a distributor for many years. The film was kind of like somehow lost in the limbo. It was like an orphan film. And then finally, we got the Harmon brothers that decided to bet on it. And yes, we were all fully surprised. Even though the Harmon brothers really, really felt really strong because they chose July 4th to release the film. And as you know, the summer is called summer blockbusters. Independent films don't even dare to go out in July on the summer. And we were against Indiana Jones and then Mission Impossible. And what I hear is that we had surpassed them, both films, both franchises on box office. So I was very surprised that there was a hunger and that there was a very large audience for the film like this.
When you say that Tim Ballard's life story surpassed the fiction that you were planning to write, that's going to be very interesting to a lot of people, I think, because obviously when we watch a movie, usually you think, oh, well, things must be exaggerated or it can't really be like that. They've added things for dramatic effect. But my understanding is for this film, if anything, a lot of the details are sort of downplayed a little bit because obviously it has to be digestible for an audience, to watch. Was it difficult to draw a line between being true to the subject matter while also not upsetting viewers and making it a film that is actually watchable?
Yeah, that was the most difficult part. How to take a subject matter that dark and write it in a way that the audience could digest it, and not only digest it, they could actually enjoy it, because at the end it's a film, and you don't go to the movies to be hit over the head. You go to the movies to be entertained. So, I had to dramatize a lot of the elements in order to explore and reveal the truth. So it was very, very difficult. It took us 2 years just to write the screenplay. Um, and I had to take creative licenses. So, normally when you write a biopic, your subject is already dead, most of the biopics. So you have more freedom to kind of take creative license. In this case, I had Tim Ballard reading every page I was writing, and he was like, "Oh, that didn't happen this way," and I was like, "Well, can we?" So it's always kind of figuring out a way to create that balance. So I say like a good 75 to 80% of the film is exactly how it happened, and then I took a good 20% in order to be able to make it a cinematic biopic and a journey, an odyssey. I say this film is an odyssey through the heart of darkness, through the lens of hope. I also wanted to make a movie that reminds the audience that they're watching a movie. So it is very stylized. It has, it's not trying to be neorealistic and very real. It's actually, my goal was for the audience to feel that they're watching a movie so they can actually enjoy it, exploring this subject matter. I took a lot of creative license on the visual journey. A lot of people say this is a cinematic journey. It's a movie that begins when the movie ends, meaning it leaves the audience in a state of reflection. But I've also heard from all the audiences that they also feel inspired, which is really interesting, because to make a movie with this subject matter and to live inspired, it's a powerful thing.
I heard a lot of people saying that they were struck by the colors in the film, the fact that it's such a vivid movie and such a colorful movie, which kind of contrasts with the dark subject matter playing out on screen, that kind of lends itself to what you're discussing here, that it really pops from a visual perspective. There's something very grandiose about it in that way.
Yeah, and that was the goal. The goal was to make it as cinematic as possible, and it was to kind of continue. This is the opposite, a lot of the times when you make a film, you wanted to make it very real, so people kind of dive into the realism. Here, I made a choice. It was the opposite. I actually wanted to create a visual narrative that continues to remind the audience, oh, I'm watching a film. The lighting is very film noir. The camera movements are, very, very operatic, if you per se. And, the fights, they're very symbolical. It's still an action film, but I didn't want to create an action film where like the fights were, too real. I wanted to kind of be more symbolic. It's almost like if you go to see an opera or a play, you'll be able to digest the theme way easier. So I did watch a lot of the films that were already on this subject matter, and they were too real that I couldn't even finish them because this subject is so heavy. So I actually wanted to go the other direction, and to my surprise, I hear a lot of the audiences. We had 100% in Rotten Tomatoes from the audience, 100%. We had it for 2 weeks, and constantly I was reading, this is a beautiful film. I love this film, which is kind of like, it kind of is hard to say just because, it's a hard subject matter, but they were enjoyed in the film, and you can enjoy something that has profound meaning. And that was the goal. And I feel proud that we were able to achieve this.
I think what a lot of people are so excited about with the film, if excited is the right word, because of the heaviness of it, I think what a lot of people have gotten out of it is that it's refreshing to see a movie that isn't totally derivative, that's telling a new story that hasn't really been told before on this scale. Because, superhero movies are great to a point, but I think having 500 Batman reboots a year and just the same franchises again and again and again is sort of what a lot of people have come to expect from the movie industry. And I think audiences are not exactly thrilled with that at a certain point. It does get old. And so for you guys to go completely off the beaten path into this very new territory and covering a story that's never really been told before in this way, I think people find very engaging and refreshing.
Yeah, yeah, and it also revealed that there is hunger for this kind of stories, and I just hope that we can continue to make films that entertain you, but that also, you know, kind of leaves you in a state of reflection. For me, one of the films that completely changed the direction of my career was when I was a film student, and I saw the film Schindler's List. And I remember at that time I didn't have a car because I was a broke student. And I remember walking home and saying to myself, that's the kind of cinema I want to make. And I want to make cinema that the movie begins when the movie ends, that when you walk away, you continue to reflect. And in some cases, that you begin to ask some existential questions. And that's the cinema that I like, and this film revealed to us that there's an audience, not just a small audience. Now we can see it with the box office, and now we're going to see how we do internationally. I
Are,
hope.
are
I
you?
hope.
Sorry, I was going to say, are you impressed by global audiences that they have received it so well, and that people are kind of mature enough, if I suppose, to watch a movie like this and to take on board what the message of the film is?
Yeah. Well, we're going to see. We've just been doing some premieres, and the premieres have been doing great. We haven't come out yet. I think the August 31st, it comes out in all Latin America. And then I think sometime in September, I think it's September 1st or sometime it comes out here in London and some parts in Europe. So we're going to see how. I want to keep my expectations low, but I'm excited as well.
Now, obviously, there's been a lot of inexplicable criticism of the film from the kind of mainstream news media. Needless to say, as you pointed out, the audience score on all these review websites is overwhelmingly positive. The general public seems to love it, but that there are certain news publications who have taken aim at the film for reasons that I don't really understand. I would have thought that if there's any issue we can all kind of come together and hold hands on and agree on, it should be something like this. Why do you think there has been that criticism from a certain section of the press? It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I'm wondering, do you have any insight on that?
It was very painful. Exactly what you say. If there was an issue that we could all come together, it would be human trafficking and child trafficking. I just feel that we are in this collective tribal way of thinking that is very dangerous. And this whole inclination to start labeling people, labeling films, labeling filmmakers. And this was a way of bullying, I feel. It's like, I'm just an independent filmmaker, storyteller. And a lot of those first attacks, they didn't even bother to talk to me. So what was the motive? If they would have found out that this movie started writing and getting into this in 2015, all these conspiracy theories didn't even exist at that time. So, I think it was also the lack of research and just jumping into conclusions. And then it was just at one point just became so ridiculous that they were labeling the film daily. It's like every day I will wake up and I will see a new label. And then what does label do? Labels are very dangerous because all it does, it excludes audiences, it separates people, and it hurts people, and it hurts the film, and they hurt me really deeply as an artist. And it's in many ways, I can't control what people that work on the film, if they want to be very vocal about their own beliefs or whatever they believe. I can't control, and I don't want to control it. Because the minute we want to control each other of what we say, then it's almost like becoming a dictatorship. And it's like, look, that's what America is all about. Everybody has the freedom to think whatever they want. But now it seems that if you think something and people don't agree with you, boom, they label you. And they don't only label you, they label the whole team. It's like, a movie is made by hundreds of people. And when they label a film something, they're labeling everybody, And I just feel if you're going to dare to label something, you better be an expert. You better be an academic, have a PhD. It's like labeling a medicine the wrong way and you're not a doctor. That could be very dangerous because that means you can take the wrong medicine. And that's what I think it did. But on the other side, it also revealed itself that the audience were the ones that came and defended it. They're like, those labels are not real. They're not true. Go see the film. So they became the walking billboards. They became the people that started promoting the film because they did not think it was fair. And they did not think, they felt like this was a bullying. And then number two, the numbers don't lie. It's like, who was the audience? It's like, what? 20 million people are part of this conspiracy theory. It's like, really? And now we're going to go internationally. This American conspiracy theories don't exist in Latin America. So, like, I didn't understand. And then when the data came in, it showed up that 35% of the audience that came to see the film were Hispanics. And then there was a massive percentage of people that, because they did some polls, they were Democrats, and then some others were from the other parties. So it was a film that was supportive by people of faith, by people of no faith, and people in between. It's like you can't have that many millions of people just of one group, and that just proof of all these labels how incorrect they were. And I just hope that what happened to us doesn't happen to anybody. I don't wish this to anybody because it's painful. It is painful, and it's more painful when you're just one filmmaker and you get all of these massive media
firestorm, yeah,
giants just coming in and pulling out their bazookas and just calling you names. And you can tell many of the times they did not watch the film, because at one point I read one, it's like, oh, this film was funded by these conspiracy theorists. And I'm like, well, just watch the film. You're going to see at the end of the film the credits, and you're going to see who funded the film, and you're going to see that the people that funded the film are high profile public figures that everybody knows. It's like in the late 1900s, late 1800s or early 1900s, you start seeing funded by the Rockefellers. It's like it is that big of the people that funded this film. There's some big high profile names, and they're in the movie. I don't want to mention them right here, but if you watch the movie at the end, you're going to see the people that funded the film. So I just felt like some of the attacks, people didn't took the time to actually do the research, and they just jump into conclusions. Now, that's not everybody. There were some good media that supported the film, that came and clear their name, that took the time to do some research. So I don't want to generalize. So it was a mixed thing,
Well, if it's any consolation, I think the unwarranted controversy probably helped, if anything, that it's a kind of free publicity, and as you say, the audience clearly didn't buy it for the most part and hasn't bought it. So if anything, it may have worked out in the long run. I was going to ask you about the scale of the human trafficking problem, because earlier in the year, the US State Department, they issued a statement that Ireland, the country that I live in, is failing to tackle human trafficking within its territory, and that this is a growing problem. We know this has been a growing problem in Ireland for years and across Europe. Do you think people really understand how pervasive this issue really is? And everybody knows it's happening, but do you think they know how much it's happening?
No, because I wrote a movie about it, and I still don't understand it. I still don't see how big the scope. All I know is that we did a movie, and it's the tip of the iceberg. So I don't think we know as a society how big this problem is. It's just revealing itself. Just a couple of weeks ago, I mean, every day there's news coming out of all these different rates and arrests of pedophiles and pedophile rings and these massive human trafficking, organizations that are working very organized worldwide. So I just feel that this is something that continues to be revealed. I'm not an expert, So I always tell people, like, look, do your own research. Just Google. Just in America, there is a report from Homeland Security, and the numbers are very scary. And then the reports from the FBI, the numbers are very scary. And these are just in the U.S., which is one of the most secure, safe country, right? So now think about how big the numbers must be in third world countries, where the safety and the the police and all these organizations are, they don't have the resources that America has. So, who knows how big this is? Think about all these countries, like they have earthquakes and parents die and all these children were left and all, like Haiti, or the wars that are happening around the world. Like, what happens to the children? So yes, I don't think we know, and I include myself in there. I'm just, I'm not an expert. I'm just made a movie, but I do feel there's experts out there that have all that information, and that people can just right now in 2 seconds do some research and find out. And I do feel like this movie has created some awareness and has inspired people to go and support all these different organizations that are trying to fight child trafficking worldwide. So when people ask me, what can I do? I said, look, just go online, Google, and find out which organization you want to help. There is a lot of organizations. There's organizations that only focused into, rehab, into rehabilitating the victims that want to come back into the world after they were rescued. There is other organizations that are fighting this human trafficking through law enforcement and partnerships with different countries and so on. So it's a kind of a thing that it's a calling. Like for me, it was a calling to write a movie about it. Just feel like the audience feels called to want to do something about it. The easiest thing is to talk about it. That's number one. That's free. You don't have to. Doesn't take anything. Just go to a dinner and bring the conversation up. And I think awareness is one of the things that start to lead to change.
That's a great point, because we heard as well here in Ireland that our state child protection agency that takes care of children is being investigated because allegedly there are children under state care who are being abused by gangs of men. That's currently being investigated. The government confirmed that. And that you think if something like that can happen in a first world country like Ireland, then in other parts of the world where there's less oversight, that's got to be significantly more dramatic. And have you heard a lot of instances of things like that happening, even within institutions in major countries?
Yeah. We've heard that the support that is being poured out right now into all of different organizations has been incredible, and some credit to film, and we're just very honored that this dialogue has actually transcended a country, and then it has become a global movement. And I hope this is the beginning. Storytellers have a big voice into create an awareness, and I that was my motive to write a movie about this. It was very simple. It was not this complicated thing that they put in the news. It was just very simple. I wanted to make a movie that opened up a conversation about child trafficking, which was a taboo. That was that simple, to the point that I was gonna write a fiction. Just be like, hey guys, is this something that how I know it's happening, but how much is it happening? How big is this? And that's why I wanted just to stay on the tip of the iceberg. But this goes beyond. It's like I heard most of the child sex abuse happens within families. The uncle, the neighbor, the friend of the friend. So it just transcends. It's this. This movie only presents one little, area of the problem, but the problem is way massive. It can goes all the way into many different ways of horrors that happens to trafficking children and humans, human organ harvesting and so on, that I just did not even want to diving into that. But when I was doing my research, that was what's popping. I was like, okay, that's not going to be in the movie.
You mentioned earlier that Tim Ballard's life could be made into a series and that you had to focus on one particular mission for the sake of a film and the time constraints that come with that. Is that something that you would consider in the future? Are you going to be pursuing more projects related to this subject, going forward, or have you decided yet, or would you be thinking about going maybe in a totally different direction as far as film goes?
I always say as a filmmaker, to make a movie, so many things have to come together. So when people ask me, "What's your next film?" I always answer, "The one that is getting made," because you're always working in many different projects. So yeah, this is the Tim Ballard story is an origin story. It was when he left the government and started this mission into going into the world to rescue children. Um, there is conversations about exploring, Haiti. He did a lot of work in Haiti, and yes, we're considering it. But right now, I'm just starting another film. So I'm in pre-production of another movie that is completely a different theme. And I have a movie coming out on March 8th, worldwide. It's called Cabrini. The trailer is already all out, and it's also a very important movie about social justice, but more importantly, about the power of the woman. This is a woman that an immigrant that came to the U.S. and to New York, and really, really had a massive impact in the people that were kind of forgotten. The immigrants that were dying in the streets. And she built an empire as big as the Rockefellers, but it was an empire of hope. All everything she built, she was able to use all of these resources to help people in need. But choose a woman, and she had to fight. So it is a big action film, and the power of this woman that had to face all these institutions that were controlled and run by men.
Fantastic. Sounds excellent. Did you have anything you wanted to add, or any final thoughts that you'd like audiences to know?
Well, to not be scared to come see Sound of Freedom. It's actually an inspirational film, even though it explores a dark subject matter. They can trust that they're gonna go. It's almost like you go in a vehicle of hope. You're transcending to this. You're gonna go into this odyssey, but it's safe. And it will leave you in a state of reflection, but inspired. So I invite everybody to come and see the film, because I do feel that creating awareness and watching this film, besides that they're gonna enjoy it and be entertained and go on this cinematic journey, it's a way to start being part of the change by watching this film.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alejandro. Great to talk to you.
Thank you.